Hello there, this is Zeeebo and welcome back to another video. So for those of you guys who are going to end your Waves of Intrigue season or is already past the Waves of Intrigue season reset, you will be getting this glorious hero chest tool, which will allow you to select from one of the 8 units right here, as you guys can see. So we have Talene, Phraesto, Reinier, Dionel, Scarlita, Berial, Dunlingr, as well as Harak right here. So in today's video, we're going to break down which unit has the highest priority you want to go for, as well as where the other units are seeing use and whether or not they are still good. Okay, so starting off, I'll start with what I feel is the lowest priority for most people. Not saying that these units are bad, but it's number one, they're either too niche, or number two, they are slowly falling off the meta a little bit. So first of all, Dino is a unit which I'll say it's very PvP centric, but right now with the introduction of Bonnie, there's a lot more counters to Dino centric teams because you have a way to actually bring down Dino really fast before he's able to devastate your team, and that's why in terms of power level, he's not as omnipotent as he used to be in the late game. And if you do want to focus on the Dino hyper carry teams, you need a lot of investments on Dino for him to be really powerful. Like, this unit scales with Paragon stats, and it's a unit that becomes a lot stronger the higher Paragon tier you can push him into. But before that, he might be a little bit weak to the current Bonnie meta because of how Bonnie actually counters his mechanic as well as the enlightening spell position in general. So that's for Dino's position. I'll say he is a very skippable unit for most people unless you're PvP centric or unless you're a big spender with the resources to max him out. So next one, we have Dunlingr. So similar to Dunlingr is a unit which is PvP centric, and I'll say Dunlingr right now is super duper niche, only appearing in a few comms. And yes, he might be really powerful in shutting down ultimate centric comms, but you can do it much more effectively and cheaply with Lily May in most cases. So in terms of the budget player's perspective, I think Dunlingr is definitely a skippable unit because you have multiple ways to deal with healing, you have multiple ways to deal with ultimates, and you have more and more ways that can overcome Dino, which makes him less powerful over time unless the ultimate side of things or the healing side of things goes out of hand. That's where he might actually become super duper meta, but right now not so much. And same thing as Dino, because it's PvP centric, you don't actually use him a lot for the PvE thing, and then that's where he's not as good and he's not as versatile in terms of general gameplay. So the third unit, which is also PvP centric, is Berial right here. So Berial right now it's a little bit more towards the PvP side than the PvE side, because for the PvE side you can definitely run Berial for zoo teams. There are a few teams and a few game modes where you run Berial to get maximum damage, and Berial actually has quite a bit of synergy with Bonnie because he's a magical attacker, being able to spawn silhouette to trigger Bonnie's ability itself. But in terms of the general usage of Berial, I think Berial is super duper niche. Like, he has users, but it's like very specific situations, and in terms of flexibility, not as good as probably the other 4 units in terms of team building as well, because Berial doesn't fit into all teams as easily as the likes of Phraesto, as the likes of Talene, Reinier, or even Scarlita, right? So, and the thing is, the power level of Berial is there, but he's not as strong as our dear Harak boy over here. So that's why this unit right now, I think he is a decent unit if, let's say, you do like his character design and you do want to build the teams that he is good in, right? But other than that, he's a very skippable character, so don't go for them. So these 3 units, right? Dino, Berial, as well as Dunlingr, don't go for them if you don't have plans to sort of deep dive into their teams itself. Now next, let's talk about the other 5 units. So Scarlita has sort of I'll say like fallen off quite a bit in terms of general usage. So Scarlita was like, I'll say, a unit that's damn good for both PvP as well as the PvE side, but with regards to the mechanics change as well as the charms that she gets from this season, I think Scarlita is still gonna be a PvP centric character more than a PvE one, because her charms right now, or from what we can see right here, is a very single target centric buff, which is probably going to make her really powerful as the late game carry once she descends from the sky, and also has the flexibility to fit into multiple teams for the different AFK stages should you need her for specific stages itself. But other than that, in terms of bossing, in terms of your daily Dream Realm runs, in terms of battle drills, in terms of like every other game mode that's not PvP or maybe your AFK stage side, I think Scarlita is a little bit underpowered right now. So like in terms of priority, also not that high. But then if you want some Scarlita magic in terms of the PvP side, where she's able to cast her ultimate, slam the opponent out with her EX weapon ability through the insta-Q, or you just don't like those inbound units a lot, like Igor, Torrent, Talene, Tarsi, for example, then she might be a decent choice, right? She always has the ability to perform some Scarlita magic in PvP, but yeah, pretty niche. Still good, pretty niche, and a unit which I think probably is not as good as she used to be. So that's for Scarlita's rating. So this four, right, these four over here, Dionel, Scarlita, Berial, and Dunlingr, they are number one, either a little bit less used and a little bit less flexible, and they don't have the versatility compared to the remaining four itself. So I will put them on the lower end, but if you do like their individual kits, or if you're building up their teams, feel free to go for them, okay? Now, for Talene's case, out of the four remaining units, Harak right now is definitely a unit which is able to steamroll, provided you're able to get him up in terms of tiers and equipments, and also the teams itself, right? Talene, on the other hand, I think for this Chains of Eternity season, Talene actually lost more in the charm skill compared to the last season, because I think Talene's early game last season was super duper strong. Like, she was basically in almost every meta team for the Dream Realm side, and a huge part of why she's so good in the early game was because of how good her charms were. Like, her charms ability, which was super duper massive in making her like this super powerful unit, is nerfed, or is a lot less efficient in this season, at least from what you can see right here. So her charm ability in the previous season was, I'll say, a lot stronger compared to this one, although there is a possibility that once she reached the second part where she increases the ultimate damage, things could change, right? She could be a late game powerhouse, because if you base it on the elite and epic side of things, it's just energy regen per battle, which means that she does get energy regen, but she doesn't get the damage increase, which I'll say is a nerf, at least on the early to mid game. So Talene's ability in this season, at least in the early to mid game, will be less powerful than she was in the Waves of Intrigue side, and that's why in terms of the strength or the power level of Talene, I'll say she's also on the lower end compared to the remaining four, because Talene used to dominate the Dream Realm side in the early game in the Waves of Intrigue side, but in Chains of Eternity so far we haven't actually seen her being this key carry or meta carry for every boss right now. So like, I would like to sort of put her in the less powerful compared to the remaining four side, but she definitely has her users, because any game modes or any boss battles where she's able to channel her full ultimate, channel the full AoE damage, she is going to be devastating on the damage side. So she's gonna find some use no matter what. And for the PvP side, in terms of her kit, I think she is a very annoying unit to deal with, and generally speaking goes really well into multiple teams as well. So her only true counter is technically Scarlita, being able to send her out from the battlefield immediately. But other than that, right now she doesn't have an exact counter yet, so she's gonna be pretty much usable for PvP for quite a bit as well. So that is Talene's evaluation. I think she's a unit you can go for, but in terms of the power level, slightly lower compared to the other three. Definitely usable, but just not as good, or you have other better options. Now for Harak's case, Harak is currently the strongest physical carry so far, and I think this will probably stay a little bit longer, because in the next few units to be released, they seem to be more magical centric, right? We have Lawson, we also have Twins, but Valkyr is also a physical attacker. So for that, we're not sure how good Valkyr will be. So I'm not going to judge a unit that is in the future, in the second banner, from what I see right now, right? But she is going to be quite decent, at least from the kit itself. So in terms of Harak's position as a physical attacker, or as the strongest physical attacker, I think it will stay relevant for a while. And Harak still sees some use in the early game Dream Realm side, and Harak has really proven his worth in the late game side for the bossing, as well as the Dream Realm side, or even game modes where you need to kill multiple units, like Relentless Rumble, because he can jump around, kill units quickly, and then move on to the next target. So Harak's definitely really strong, but he is definitely a unit to bump up to Supreme Plus in order to see effect. So this unit is a unit that works decently well at the EX weapon tier Mythic Plus, but then the true potential of Harak lies in his Supreme Plus ability, giving him that additional energy charge whenever he uses the ultimate, for him to spam the ultimate more consistently, to jump around, to be immune to do a lot of damage, and then continue the Tidal Assault as well as the Flash Freeze stack itself. Okay, so Harak is definitely up there in terms of the tier levels, and definitely a strong unit that you can utilize in multiple different game modes, either AFK stage or even your bossing or PvP contents. But do remember to get him to Supreme Plus if you want to focus on hip. Now, for the last two units, we have Reinier as well as Phraesto right here. So the highest priority that you should get up in terms of tier would be Phraesto, followed by Reinier. So previously it would be Reinier first to Mythic Plus and then Phraesto because of how versatile and useful Reinier is. But Reinier is still really useful, by the way. Don't get me wrong, this unit is still really good at what it does, being a debuffer, being a formation breaker in PvP, and also sometimes usable for your AFK stage side. But the thing about Reinier is you have quite a few substitutes in the S and A level hero pool, like Sonya, Hypogean, Mikola, Smokey, as well as Coco, as well as a few buffers or units that can do DPS while buffing. So generally speaking, Reinier has substitutes, right? So the value drops a little bit compared to Phraesto, because Phraesto is strong in the early game and also really strong in the late game. So this unit, number one, is also really unique in terms of what it wants to do, because it's a really tanky tank that can do quite decent damage in the late game and has the ability to buff two units, one giving damage reduction and one giving energy regen buff. So what this means is that in terms of flexibility as well as power level from the early to the late game, Phraesto is going to be there. Like in the AFK stage pushing side, Phraesto is going to make a big difference in terms of making this pushing a lot more comfortable, just because of how tanky he is and allowing certain team archetypes to be a lot stronger because of his frontlining power. At the same time, in the normal arena side as well as the Supreme arena side, you can definitely find some teams where you can slot Phraesto in to give you some advantage, to buff up your carries or use with different team combinations because of the Hypogean tag as well as how tanky this unit is with the utility inputted. So that's why this unit, generally speaking, is really good from the early to the late game. And in the late game itself, where the bosses goes into the endless mode, Phraesto's pretty much used in every single team in the previous season, so there is a high chance that he could still be pretty much used in every single team in this season in the endless mode. So that's more to the late game side, but still this unit is good in the early game for your PvE contents, right? And then later on, once you go into the late game, it's more so for everything else with your Dream Realm rankings itself. So that's pretty much it, just a simple compilation of the unit recommendations. So highest priority, let's run through them once again, will be Phraesto, followed by Reinier. Harak, I'll say Harak might be a little bit above Reinier, right? If you are like built up on Reinier to Mythic Plus, because like I think Reinier is still a really good character all around and has some users everywhere. So in terms of usability, I think Reinier is a little bit higher, and whereas for Harak's case, you will also need to build up the other units to make Harak look good. So that is the recommendation side, but Harak is definitely meta for sure, just not sure how long. And then we have Talene, which I think generally versatile and usable depending on the game modes as well as the situation. And then for the more PvP centric ones like Dionel, Scarlita, Berial, and Dunlingr, choose them based on your own preference itself. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more. I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.